Greetings viewer, Eric the Car Guy here. Today we're going to do a little bit of electrical diagnosis, and I'm going to play with my new toy, my new PowerProbe 3. PowerProbe 3. Say that 5 times fast. What we have here is, in this Cavalier, the driver's side window I've actually repaired twice. I put a window motor regulator assembly in. The cables had broken on the inside and it jumped off its track. So I replaced that, and then it came back a few weeks later and it had jumped off of its track. I put it back on the track and tried to figure out what was going on. And one of the things that I'd noticed is as the window would go down with the auto function, because this setup has just a little button that you can just push the down and it'll continue to go down until the window is all the way down and stop. You don't have to hold the button, so it's an auto down function. But whenever I used that auto down function, I noticed that when the window reached the bottom of its travel, it kept going like it wanted to keep going, and I was a little concerned about that. The owner of this car is a friend of mine, and I told him, I said, keep an eye on it because I'm not exactly sure what's happening here. I'm going to take a look at the circuit and the wiring diagram and see what causes that auto down function to stop when the window reaches the bottom of its travel. Well, with my PowerProbe 3 and everything else, I'm going to take you over and show you a little bit about the diagnosis that I went through and the things that I found that were interesting. Me. Let's go now. Okay, here's the wiring diagram for our circuit. And as you can see, it's powered by a fuse that is in hot and hot or run. And it goes through the window master switch. And you'll see right here, the express down function for ground is here located inside the master switch. The motor, and then all there is some simple wiring between here and the motor. So all you really have is power going to the switch itself, and then power and ground going to the motor depending upon which way it runs. A lot of times electric motors, like window motors and things, all they do is change the direction of electron flow within the motor to change what direction the motor works. So for up, it's going to go in one direction. For down, it's going to go into another direction. Hence the reason why your grounds and your power distribution is handled differently here, depending upon if it's going up or down. But the most important thing is the express down feature, the thing that's supposed to turn it off when the window reaches the bottom of its travel, is located here inside the master switch. So my friend brings me the car, and luckily it wasn't raining, because now the driver's side window is down and it will not go back up. And when he originally brought it to me last time and I made the repair, I noticed that the window regulator assembly was really loose. Like you could take this whole window and move it around a great deal. So it seemed that slop was allowing it to jump off of its track. But I was a little mystified when it showed up and it was still in the track, but it just wouldn't go up. So I tried to switch to see if it would go up or down. Now this is a 4-door and the window switch is actually located here in the console. So what I tried to do is I tried to make the motor go up and down, and I was actually listening to the door as I did this. And of course the key is turned on while I'm doing this because this won't function without the key. Remember, its fuse is hot and run or start. So I can hear it trying to move, but nothing going in this direction. The other windows work fine. Up, down. So up should be this way. And I can hear something trying, but it's just not enough. I've already gone ahead and removed the inner door panel to gain access to this. I'm not really doing a video on getting the window regulator motor assembly in and out. But if you do these, know that you're going to have to cut the rivets off in order to get to the motor. There's going to be some rivets that you're going to have to cut, and then I just put a nut and bolt in there in case I have to do it again, which I actually did. But this is the connector for the motor itself. The factory connector is a little bit different than this. This is an aftermarket window motor assembly that I used here. This is the connector. These are the 2 wires going to the motor itself, and we can check with our handy PowerProbe whether or not we're getting the power and the grounds that we need from this connector in order to make the motor go up and down. But I can tell you right now, I know it's getting the power in the ground, or at least some power and some ground, to here, because I do hear the motor try to move when I hit the switch. So now I'll hook my PowerProbe up to the battery and check what I got going into the motor. Now I'm going to hook, ouch, that's sharp. Now I'm going to hook this onto the battery. It also has a lead to where you can plug into the cigarette lighter, but I'm just gonna hook up to the battery. I'm already under the hood anyway. But I just take the leads and just clip them on black for battery negative and red for battery positive. And it tells me it's on. Okay, now I have my PowerProbe hooked up, and one of the things that I can quickly do is check feed voltage from the battery, or I can check battery voltage. And all I've got to do for that is just push towards the power and look at the screen. And it tells me I have 12.1 volts at the battery, which is a bit low. I would like to see 12.6, but it'll do. It's probably because I've had the key on. I've been messing around with these window switches for a little bit before I started shooting this video. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to work the switch, and I'm going to check. This will tell me if I have power and ground at the connector going to the motor. All right, once again, here's the connector with the power and ground feed going to the motor. I'm going to unplug it. And this is the harness side, the female side. So this is going to tell me the signal that the switch is sending. Now, because this is a motor, like I showed you on the wiring diagram, depending upon whether the window is going up or the window is going down, that's going to tell me which side is going to get the 12 volts. Because if we switch it from one side to the other, then we can change the direction of the motor. So the motor is directional based on current flow going through it. This tool will tell me whether or not I have power and ground. So the green light tells me I have ground and ground on the other side. And that makes sense because I'm not working the switch yet. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just probe one side and work the switch to see if I have power at either one of these connectors when I touch the switch. This is down. I get battery voltage on this brown wire, it looks like. So there's brown and there's blue here. And on the brown wire, it looks like when I push it to go down, I get 12 volts. Okay. Now I'm going to try the other side, since I know that when I push down, I'm going to get my battery voltage on the brown wire. Now I'm going to push up to see if I have battery voltage on my blue wire. This is my other blue wire here. And in fact, I do have power, but I wonder if it's enough, because you can have voltage, but you may not have enough amps. Why don't we try something? One of the reasons I like this tool so much is it has the ability to give me power and ground. And I also have another lead here that is battery ground. So whenever you touch that lead, you can see that it gives me, and by the way, green is going to be for ground and red is going to be for voltage. But that tells me that I have a known good ground here that I can clip on, and I can actually work the motor using this tool. So here's the connector that I have here, and the wires on this are not the same at all. In fact, the blue goes to the brown and the red goes to the blue. So it's a little goofy in that respect, but we're just doing this for testing purposes. So I'm going to clip this on to the connector. It doesn't matter what side, because remember, it just depends on which direction we send power through the motor, which direction it's going to go, up or down. I'm going to clip on here. Hopefully I've got a ground connection. I'll know. I clip there because of the way that connector is set up. I want to make sure that it actually touches the metal. Now I have my ground connection here. I'm going to add voltage to it and see if the window will go up. And it does. So what is this information telling me? Well, it tells me that if I supply power and ground directly to the motor, it works as normal. So I am also getting a signal from the switch, but it may not be enough. So I'm thinking it might be a connection issue, but actually I'm leaning more towards that switch, and I'll tell you why. Because remember the last time I told you about when the window came back, it would go almost all the way down and then seemed like it wanted to keep going for a little bit before it finally cut off, to the point where it was actually moving the entire window run channel assembly back and forth during that process. So that got me to thinking it might come back, but now I'm suspecting the switch, because that's what has that mechanism in it to basically tell it, okay, it's reached the bottom of its travel, let's stop going. It sees the amps go up and the motor's trying to move and it can't. It's supposed to cut the power at that point. So I'm actually thinking that it's a problem there. I'm going to check the connection at the motor itself just to make sure that that's a good connection, because if there's a bad connection there won't be sufficient amps to flow to the motor in order for the motor to work properly. So we got to make sure that we got what we need, or else we got nothing. Looking down inside the connection, it doesn't really look like there's a whole lot of corrosion or stuff in there that might cause a problem. So I'm not thinking it's here, but I also want to make sure that it's going to have the ability to make contact here. But just for the heck of it, I'm going to back probe it and just see if I'm getting what I'm supposed to get as far as the voltage there. I turned my beeper off. The voltage seems to be going all over the place as I work the switch, and that's not sufficient to move the motor. So let's swap out this switch and see if I'm right. Okay, I've already removed the key and turned the power off. And thankfully GM has made this like wicked easy to do. You can actually just pull this assembly out and undo the connectors. Perhaps I spoke too soon. They made child-proof connectors for me. Now, I'm not gonna put well, actually I probably could put the plastic cover on here quite easily. But before I do that, I'm just gonna plug in my new switch. And by the way, the only place I could find this was at the dealer. You might be able to find an online source. So here's my new switch, and it is from GM. So I want to make sure I plug stuff into the right locations. That one goes there. That one goes there. Plug in my window. I want to make sure our motor's plugged back in. Ready to go. And let's see if this works. I suppose I should put the key back in the ignition. Yeah, remember when I said the key had to be on for this to work? Okay, I'm just going to work the switch here. Awesome, works like a charm. Now I'll take my old switch and I'll switch the cover over. And it's just held on by plastic tabs, so it's easy enough to push those tabs and get those out of the way, and then just sort of push the switch down. The switch will push right out the bottom. There's my old switch assembly, and as you can see, it's got some stuff on it, which probably, maybe caused its demise. Maybe we could go in here and clean this up, maybe not. But we were assured with the new switch that everything's going to work like it's supposed to. So all I have to do with the new switch is really just push it up to the bottom, stick it down on the console, and we're good to go. Yay. Okay, now I'm going to put my door panel and everything back together and make sure it all works the way it's supposed to. But I know it's fixed. I love my PowerProbe. I've been using these since the mid-90s. The first time I used one, it was the greatest thing ever, and I'm not just saying that. Before I had this, I used to have like a different set of alligator clips and jumper wires and everything else to do the same thing that this does. And now that they've added the feature that tells me how much voltage I'm looking at, it's really useful in a situation like this where you could see that we were getting crazy voltage going to the motor when we were trying to push it to go up, whereas we were getting the full battery voltage when we were telling it to go down. So that pretty much told me that my switch, after looking at the wiring diagram, of course, and seeing that there's just really a wiring harness that runs between the switch and here, yes, there could have been a problem in the wiring, but in my experience, you go for the place with the most wear. And I could have done a resistance check between the wires that were here at the connector for the motor and the wires at the switch itself to make sure that the wiring between the switch and the window motor were good. As you can see, we've had a successful repair and we can move on with our lives. Anyway, to wrap up, I am Eric the Car Guy. You can always find me at EricTheCarGuy.com, or you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Google+. Around here, I'm going to close with be safe, have fun, and stay dirty. And if you can, find one of these things. They're wicked cool. I'll put a link down in the description. See ya.